Hello, and welcome to Moments in History. I'm Linda Shenton Matchett, author, speaker, and history geek. While researching my stories, I unearthed tons of intriguing historical information that doesn't end up in my books. So I've created this channel so I can share those tidbits with you. I really appreciate you stopping by. Now, in the past, I've shared about the wartime service of actors Jimmy Stewart and Clark Gable and musician Glenn Miller. So today, I thought I'd give the ladies an equal chance and tell you about actresses Myrna Loy, Bea Arthur, and Betty White. Born Myrna Adele Williams in Helena, Montana on August 2, 1905, Myrna Loy got her acting start at the age of 12 in Helena's Marlowe Theater. A year later, her father passed away of influenza, and her mother took her and her brother to Los Angeles. When she was 15, she found work in a local stage production to help with family finances. At some point, Rudolph Valentino happened to be in the audience during one of her performances and felt she had what it took to be in film. So he introduced her to Hollywood, where she landed her first movie in 1925. At that point, that's when she changed her last name to Loy, feeling that Myrna Williams just was too plain. Hardly an overnight sensation, she had bit parts in more than 20 silent movies. Time passed and her career slowly gained traction. The size and number of her roles increased. Then, in 1934, she appeared in Manhattan melodrama with Clark Gable and William Powell, and studio executives sat up and took notice. Manhattan melodrama is the first of 14 films she would shoot with Powell. Within 2 years, she would shoot another dozen movies and was so popular, she had become one of the highest paid actresses in town. Several sources indicate she was President Roosevelt's favorite actress and that her movies were often shown at the White House. As things heated up in Europe, Myrna became interested in, but didn't officially join the Hollywood Anti-Nazi League for Defense of American Democracy. But by 1940, she had turned her sights to supporting countries at war with Germany, performing for the French at a Buy a Bomber benefit, and later joining a host of Hollywood stars at the Coconut Grove to raise funds for Franco-British war relief. That summer, she and William Powell contributed their earnings from a radio broadcast to the Red Cross. Then, in January of 1941, she appeared in a radio broadcast, Bundles for Britain, and the following month did another radio broadcast, this time for Greek war relief. After the attack at Pearl Harbor, Myrna went to work full-time for the war effort, only completing 2 films between then and 1945, one of which was a short documentary on how Hollywood was contributing to the war. Initially, she mostly attended events that raised money for overseas relief and to support American troops. She worked with Clark Gable by serving in the Screen Actors Division of the Hollywood Victory Committee to coordinate appearances by stars at hospitals, bond rallies, and camp shows. She also helped run the Naval Auxiliary Canteen at Long Beach as a member of Bundles for Blue Jackets. Continuing to use her popularity, she appeared in promotional clips for war bond drives and bundles. 1942 saw her at more fundraising events, one of which occurred at Madison Square Garden, and raised $10 million in bonds and $200,000 for Army relief. Wanting to contribute more directly to the war effort, Myrna took a full-time, unsalaried job with the Red Cross as assistant to the Director of Military and Naval Welfare Service for the North American area. Quite a mouthful, isn't it? She was responsible for acting as liaison between stage and screen actors and 42 military hospitals arranging for visits to the wounded. She also personally made hospital visits and worked many shifts at stage door canteens. In 1945, she emceed an episode of Command Performance, produced by Armed Forces Radio for U.S. troops overseas. One of her first movies after the war was The Best Years of Our Lives, a drama directed by William Wyler that follows 3 returning servicemen who try to adjust being home. After the war, she combined her career with political activism, getting involved in UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, acting as co-chairman of the Advisory Council of the National Committee Against Discrimination in Housing. Quite a bit for our girl Myrna. One of the best-kept secrets in Hollywood was Bea Arthur's military service. She consistently denied the fact, and it wasn't until after her death that her time as a Marine was confirmed. Starting life as Bernice Frankel, Bea was born on May 13, 1922 in Brooklyn, New York, to a Polish father and Austrian mother. At some point, the family moved to Cambridge, Maryland. After high school, she headed to college for a year, then took a job as a food analyst at a packing plant where she tested products for mold and bacteria. In less than a year, she'd quit and moved to New York City, where she worked first as a lab technician, then in the office at a loan company. When the war broke out, she volunteered as an air raid warden. Then she heard the Marine Corps was recruiting women, and she jumped at the chance to enlist. As she was under 21, she had to obtain her parents' permission, which didn't take long, and on February 20th, 1943, Bea joined the ranks as Private Frankel. She was called to active duty a month later and sent to the U.S. Naval Training School at Hunter College in the Bronx. 6 weeks later, she was promoted to Private First Class and assigned to Headquarters Battalion, Company E. Having enlisted as a truck driver, she put in for a transfer to the Motor Transport School in North Carolina in June of 1943, saying on the request form, quote, she would be of more value to the Marine Corps in this duty because of past experience, end quote. After training, she was sent to Camp Lejeune as one of 2 women promoted to corporal from the Specialist Schools Detachment, and by December, she had been promoted to sergeant. She worked at a number of bases before finally settling at Cherry Point, North Carolina as a driver and dispatcher, and where she met future husband Robert Arthur. She would later divorce him, but keep his name. Her 1945 discharge paperwork includes her plan to attend dramatic school for a career on stage and screen, and her military appraisals called her argumentative and over-aggressive, bringing to mind her later Golden Girls character Dorothy. Typecasting, perhaps? Our last actress to serve is Betty Marion White, who was born in Oak Park, Illinois on January 17, 1922. But a year later, the family moved to Alhambra, California. When the Depression hit, they again moved, this time to Los Angeles, which even in the mid-1930s was already at 1.2 million people, a better place to find work. Betty's parents must have done well because a couple of sources indicate the family would vacation in the Sierra Nevadas, trips that would foster a desire in Betty to be a forest ranger. However, at that time, that was not a career option. Women were not allowed to serve as rangers. Instead, playing the lead in the senior play at Beverly Hills High School ignited a passion for acting, and after graduating in 1939, she decided to pursue a career in Hollywood. She was able to find stage work and do some modeling, but like many, she put her career on hold to serve her country after the U.S. entered the war. She joined the American Women's Voluntary Services that had been founded in January of 1940. Eventually growing to 350,000 members, the AWVS was the largest women's service organization in the U.S. during the war. Some of its work overlapped with those of other organizations such as the Office of Civilian Defense and the Red Cross, with tasks and services such as message delivery, ambulance driving, selling war bonds, operating emergency kitchens, cycle corps drivers, dog sled steamsters, aircraft spotters, navigation, aerial photography, fighting fires, truck driving, and canteen workers. Other women of note who were members of the AWVS are Mary McLeod Bethune, actresses Joan Crawford, Jeanette MacDonald, Lillian Randolph, and Hattie McDonald's, Arizona Congresswoman Isabella Greenway, and Mamie Eisenhower, wife of then Brigadier General Dwight Eisenhower, who would go on to become Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces and later President of the United States. While White began working as an actress and model in the 1930s, her aspirations were put on hold during the Second World War, and a month before her 20th birthday in 1941, is when she went to work for the AWVS. Assigned to the Motor Transport Services, she became a driver for the entirety of the war until 1945. In her 1995 book, Here We Go Again, White wrote how she drove a PX, post-exchange truck, carrying toothpaste, soap, candy, and the like to various gun emplacement outfits that had been set up in the hills of Hollywood and Santa Monica. Wearing her blue AWVS uniform, she spent her evenings at various recreation halls in the San Fernando Valley, where she would play board games and cards or dance and chat with servicemen on leave. At some point during this time, she met and fell in love with Army Captain Paul Popple of Chicago, Illinois. They got engaged and exchanged letters, but she did break off the relationship with a Dear Paul letter in 1944. Perhaps because of meeting a different Army officer. A year later, Betty married P-38 fighter pilot Frederick Dick Parker of Bell Center, Ohio. Unfortunately, that marriage didn't work out either, and they divorced 6 months later. After the war, she tried to find work in the movie industry, but was unsuccessful, being told she was unphotogenic. She went into radio work and eventually got her own show. She married again in 1947 to talent agent Larry Allen, but they divorced 2 years later. She finally moved into television in 1952, where she became a staple on talk and game shows. In 1963, she married TV host Alan Ludden after meeting him while a guest on Password. She continued to appear on television and films until 2019, after a career of more than 70 years. She's remembered for her creative work, but what struck me is that upon her death, the military joined in mourning, saying, "We are saddened by the passing of Betty White. Not only was she an amazing actress, she also served during World War II as a member of the AWVS, a true legend on and off the screen." I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to learn even more history, please stop by my blog, found at www.lindashentonmatchett.com. Please consider subscribing to my YouTube and podcast channels, and to see and hear new episodes that release generally on the second and fourth Fridays of each month. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day.